Yes, good morning and thanks for having me on. I think you're perfectly right. I think the original thinking behind the capital markets reform was a very healthy and sensible one. It was Draghi himself who had this idea of making it easier for companies to list on the Italian capital markets. That was the beginning. But a lot has changed since then. And I think that this reform in its current form well, it exacerbates non-existing issues and it creates a paradoxical incentive to abandon Italy for companies. Let's first start with the long-standing issues. I think one of the biggest issues in Italy has always been that the controlling shareholders have an almost hegemonic power over listed companies. This is exacerbated by special rights. Okay, so it's not getting any better, it's getting worse and worse. Then the other big issue is that the procedure for outgoing boards to put forward a slate of candidates, the so-called lista del consiglio, is becoming enormously convoluted. And this is particularly problematic for widely held companies. Think of Prysmian, for instance. So it will become so complicated. I wouldn't be surprised if some of these companies actually decide to leave Italy and list in, say, the Netherlands. So it would be a paradox. It's the exact opposite of what the bill was supposed to achieve. And then the third item is this has become, once again, enormously political. It's very hard not to think that Meloni is looking at the endless Caltagirone Mediobanca Generali saga. The overall impression is that Meloni got dragged into this war and that she is siding with Caltagirone. So again, it was a very good idea. It was meant to make things better. It's not going as planned.
Yeah, I mean, very damning assessment for you, what you said there, especially if Italian companies do eventually end up listing in Netherlands. That is exactly what they don't want to achieve out of this bill. But to your point on politics, look, this is the second time that the Meloni government has tried to tinker with the financial system. And we saw what happened last year with the proposed windfall tax on the banking system that hugely backfired. They had to water it down. Many bank CEOs were very unhappy with the announcement and the way it unfolded. And eventually, of course, the government did have to back down. Are we going to end up in a similar situation for this bill?
Yes, Meloni seems to have a chip on the shoulder with elites, with the powers that be, quote unquote. It's unclear why she's this way, but there is a consistent track record. You mentioned the windfall tax on banks. There was an attempt that was thwarted to tweak legislation about NPLs, non-performing loans. Now we have this DDL Capitali. She keeps pushing ahead. Like definitely the relationship between this government and the financial establishment is suboptimal.